In this video, we'll walk through another full BCG interactive case. I made one video earlier on an airline case on BCG's website, and now we'll go through the other case, which is a drug case. So before we get started, please take a quick second to give this video a like to help with the YouTube algorithm. Let's begin. Drug case overview. Today, we are going to discuss the case of a pharmaceutical company based in the US. The client has developed a new drug, Prevent-T, that helps reduce the rate at which a particular complication of hip replacement surgery, deep vein thrombosis, occurs. What you need to know is that DVT can lead to very serious medical conditions, including higher risk of pulmonary embolism or major bleeding. Prevent-T will directly compete against Clearvanax, an established product that is also used to reduce rates of DVT and hence DVT-related complications. Clearvanax is sold at $4 per dose and has a variable production cost of $1 per dose. The client has asked you to help set a suitable price for Prevent-T. Okay, so this case, clearly a pricing case. Let's see how we go through it. Okay, our interviewer, Vikas, will walk us through this. Great. How would you approach this case? So we have three different options here. First option says, the drug's price needs to be competitive. I'd like to know a little more about the market and the competition. Then I'll recommend a price for Prevent-T. Second option says that the pricing of any product, including drugs, can be based on various criteria such as economic value to the customer. I'd like to know a little more about the customers and the product before determining which pricing mechanism to use. And the third option says, the drug's price needs to cover costs and ensure a profit margin. We should set a price accordingly. So three very different pricing strategies here. The first one is based off of benchmarking compared to competitors. The second one seems to be based on the economic value to the customer. And the third option focuses on pricing based off of the costs. So I think these are all three great pricing approaches, and we'll probably have to use all three of them to ultimately end up with the recommendation for the price, right? The cost of the drug will kind of be the lower bound of the price that we set, while the economic value of the drug will be the upper bound. And by benchmarking our drug with that of competitors, that will help us determine where between our upper and lower bounds the drug should be priced at. So among these three options, answer choice 2 here is better than the other ones because it suggests that we want to learn more about the customers and product before determining which pricing mechanism to use. Answer choices 1 and 3 jump right into deciding that we should price the drug based off of competition or that we should price the drug based off of its production costs. So answer choice 2 here is what I'm going to go with. Sure, what exactly would you like to know? Okay. The first option says, I'd like to know whether Clearvanax has a monopoly in the market. So again, not that relevant, although you can charge a higher price in a monopoly. It doesn't tell us the optimal number of people that we should get to buy the drug to maximize revenues. Option choice 2 says, I'd like to understand the demand perspective. And option choice 3 says, I'd like to know if we can charge a price of $4 for Prevent-T, the same price that Clearvanax is sold for. So I don't like answer choice 3 here because it jumps right into proposing a price of $4 before we even understand the drug and the customers and what pricing mechanism to go with. So for that reason, I'm going to go with answer choice 2 here. If we can better understand the demand perspective, we can understand what pricing mechanism makes the most sense for this drug. Okay, what exactly do you mean by the demand perspective? 1, I mean that I want to know more about who will buy Prevent-T, okay? 2, I mean there could be a difference between the end customers, that is the patients, and the company's targeted buyers for the drug, say doctors. I think it is important to know if that distinction exists. So this distinction is important because the needs of patients and doctors in terms of buying this drug will vary. And option choice 3 says, is there a market for the drug at all and what is the size? So we already know there is a market for the drug, right? It treats complications such as deep vein thrombosis. The market size isn't that relevant because that doesn't help us determine the price. So I think 1 and 2 here are the better choices. Answer choice 2 here I'm leaning towards because it's a bit more specific than 1. Answer choice 1 just asks to know more about who will buy Prevent T, while answer choice 2 makes the distinction between the end customer patients and the doctors as two different segments that may purchase the drug. So let's go with 2. Okay, why do you think it's important to make that distinction? So I think we covered this. I think different groups have different needs and motivations, so we should look for an answer along those lines. Answer choice 1 says there isn't much difference. Okay, I disagree with that. Answer choice 2 says the difference is important. I need to know which of these two groups we'd sell to because each group will have different motivations for their purchase decisions. I think that's exactly what we're looking for. But let's just check 3 just in case. There's a difference in the market size the client would be addressing. Which of these two groups does the client plan to target? So again, the market size doesn't really help us determine the price. So 3 is pretty irrelevant. And so we'll go with answer choice 2 here. Sure, Prevent T will be sold to hospitals. Hospitals get a fixed price for hip endoprosthesis and are not reimbursed by patients' insurance companies for any complications that arise during surgery. Therefore, they would be interested in reducing complications, and Prevent T helps do exactly that. Is there any further information you would like? Okay, that makes sense. So the more the drug can help prevent complications, the more likely the hospital is at paying a higher price for it because the hospital is willing to spend money on the drug if it ends up saving them money. So now let's look at the answer choices. 1. Does using Prevent T have any downsides? 2. How do the dosages of Clearvanax and Prevent T compare? And 3. Is Prevent T better than Clearvanax at reducing the complication rates for DVT? So I think 3 here is the clear choice, right? We know how much Clearvanax is priced at. It's priced at $4. And so if Prevent T does a better job than Clearvanax, we should be able to charge a higher price. Conversely, if it performs worse than Clearvanax, then we would have to price at a lower price in order for hospitals to buy them. Answer choice 2, the dosage doesn't really matter that much because that doesn't help us determine what the price of the drug is. And finally, for answer choice 1, I think it's helpful to know the downsides, but I think if you can identify what is the economic value that you're delivering to hospitals, that takes into account the downsides already. So answer choice 3 here is the best. Great. The client has conducted studies comparing the impact of Clearvanax and Prevent T on DVT and other complications of hip endoprosthesis. Details are available in the following table. All right, let's take a look at this table. So we have our 2 drugs, Clearvanax, the competitor, and Prevent T, our drug. We have price per dose. We know that Clearvanax is already $4. The next rows show the complication rate for 3 different, looks like, symptoms or complications. We have DVT, pulmonary embolism, and major bleeding. So Clearvanax, the complication rate's 20%, Prevent T is 10%. So Prevent T does much better at preventing complications for DVT. However, it looks like for pulmonary embolism and major bleeding, the complication rate for Prevent T is actually higher than that of Clearvanax. So Prevent T is only better at DVT and worse at preventing complications for PE and major bleeding. Next, we look at cost of complication per patient. So we have DVT at $1,600, pulmonary embolism at $2,500, and major bleeding at $1,250. So right off the bat here, we can actually calculate the economic value of Prevent T. We know the difference in complication rates that Prevent T results in. And we also know the cost of each complication. So if we multiply the difference in the complication rate with the cost per complication, we can calculate how much money Prevent T either saves or costs hospitals compared to Clearvanax. So what would you like to do next? 1 says, I have information on the product and the competition. I think we should set a price for Prevent T similar to what competitor has set for this product. So I disagree with this. I don't think we can set it at the competitor price because we don't know the economic value that Prevent T provides hospitals, right? If it provides more economic value, we should actually price it higher, right? So totally disagree with answer choice 1. Answer choice 2 says, I have a lot of information about how Prevent T compares with Clearvanax and about the market. Since Prevent T will be sold mainly to hospitals, I would like to know how hospitals make their decisions on buying drugs. Okay. Seems like a reasonable ask, right? If you understand how hospitals make their purchasing decisions, then you can come up with a price that accommodates kind of their rationale or motivations for buying the drug. Answer choice 3 says, I have a lot of information now on the product and its buyers, but I'd like some information on costs. So I think knowing the cost is important in setting the price, but I think we'll come to that point later. I think right now I really want to understand what is the hospital decision-making process for purchasing these drugs, and what is the economic value that the drug provides hospitals. And I think if we can use those two pieces of information to set a price, we can check that against the cost to make sure that we're making a profit. So while costs are important, I think the logical next step, since we're kind of going down this route of comparing economic value between Clearvanax and PreventT, we should continue doing that by understanding how hospitals make their decisions buying drugs and whether or not PreventT provides any economic value. Well, hospitals are very focused on maximizing their profits, okay? That means they make their buying decisions based on the drug's economic value to them. What other information would you need to execute this value-based pricing for PreventT? All right. 1, I'd need to know the production cost of PreventT. This will help me recommend the best price. Again, similar point to the previous question. I think we'll come back to costs later. Let's focus on the value-based pricing methodology, as this question suggests here. Answer choice 2 says, I'd need to know the revenue earned per patient, then compare it with the cost caused by the complications related to hip surgery. So I don't think the revenue earned per patient matters too much, right? We're focused on the cost of complications to hip surgery, which will help inform us of the economic value that these drugs provide. Answer choice 3 says, I need to calculate the cost savings per patient from reducing complications related to hip surgery, and then determine the economic value of 1 dose of PreventT compared with the economic value of 1 dose of Clearvanax. So this again was my hypothesis as to which direction we should lean towards. I think 3 here makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's take another look at the available data for both drugs in the following table and calculate the cost savings and economic value. Great. From the data given below, calculate the total savings from using PreventT per patient compared to Clearvanax. So this is the same table before, except we're focusing just on the complications, right? Each column represents a different complication. We have DVT, PE, and bleed. And then we have the complication rate for Clearvanax, the complication rate for PreventT, and the cost per complication. So again, here, the economic value that our drug provides is the improvement in complication rate, which is a decrease in complication rate, multiplied by the cost per complication, right? So for example, looking at DVT, PreventT is 10% better on an absolute value basis than Clearvanax. So if the cost per complication is $1,600, if we reduce the complication rate by 10%, we're actually saving hospitals $160. Moving on to PE, PreventT actually does worse by 2%, right? So 2% times the cost of complication for PE, which is $2,500, gives us $50. So PreventT actually costs hospitals $50 more because it performs more poorly on PE. Similarly, for bleed, PreventT performs 4% worse. Multiplying that by a $1,250 complication rate also gets us a $50 cost, right? So overall, PreventT saves the hospital $160 on DVT. It costs the hospital $50 on PE, and it costs the hospital $50 on bleed. So net overall, the economic value of DVT is $60. So in other words, if hospitals used PreventT instead of Clearvanax, on average per patient, they should expect to save $60. Great. From the data given below, calculate the additional economic value of 1 dose of PreventT for the customer. Assume that a patient would need 30 doses. And yep, this is the same table before with our calculated savings. So this one's pretty straightforward, right? If the overall savings, as we calculated, is $60 and there's 30 doses, 60 over 30 is 2. So each dose gives an additional economic value of $2. Great. You have calculated the additional amount per dose, which is $2, that hospitals would be willing to pay for Prevent-T. What price would you suggest for Prevent-T now? Okay. Remember here that we don't want to price Prevent-T at $2, right? We calculated that the economic value that Prevent-T provides compared to Clearvanax is $2. So if Clearvanax is priced at $4, hospitals would be willing to pay up to $6 for Prevent-T because overall it performs better. So let's look at our answer choices. One says that they're willing to pay $2, so they suggest a price of $2. No, that's wrong, right? $2 is the economic value that it provides over Clearvanax. Answer choice 2 says hospitals are already paying $4 for Clearvanax. Since they're willing to pay an additional $2, I believe the price would be $6. So that makes a lot of sense, right? That's exactly what we said before. 3 says I'd suggest a price of $4, the same as Clearvanax. This we know is wrong because Prevent-T is overall a better drug than Clearvanax. So from an economic value delivery perspective, it doesn't make sense to price it at $4 when hospitals are willing to buy it for up to $6, right? So answer choice 2 here is correct. That seems like a valid suggestion. If the product is priced at $6, do you think it would be profitable for the client? So even before looking at the answer choices, we've focused right now on the economic value to help us price the drug. Now we need to consider what the cost of production of this drug are, right? If it costs more than $6 to produce this drug, then we would have to price it higher than $6, else we wouldn't be profitable. So we need info on costs. Answer choice 1 says, no, I think the price should be higher than $6 for the product to be profitable. This is wrong. We have no data to back this as we don't know the production costs. Answer choice 2 says, to determine this, I need to know the production cost per dose of Prevent-T at this price. I think that's exactly right. We need to know the cost. And answer choice 3 says, yes, we have executed value-based pricing accurately, so the product should be profitable at this price. Again, this is wrong. Just because we priced it based off of value says nothing about, profitability or production costs. So we'll have to go with answer choice 2 here. Okay. From the data given below, calculate the manufacturer's unit per dose contribution margin by manufacturing Prevent-T. Okay. So the maximum final price per dose was $6. The production cost is $2, 30 doses per patient. So if it's asking for the manufacturer's unit per dose contribution, that's just the price minus the cost. So 6 minus $2, $4. That's the contribution margin. In other words, for every dose of Prevent-T that our client sells, they make $4 in profit. Great. Now that you know the unit contribution margin, which is $4, what is the annual contribution margin that can be expected at this price? Okay, this seems pretty straightforward. We would just need to know the number of doses that our client would sell of the drug, multiply that by $4, and that should give the annual contribution. So answer choice 1 says, I need to know the number of doses of Prevent-T required annually per patient and the number of patients per year. That makes a lot of sense, right? Number of patients times doses taken per patient times this unit contribution margin gives us the annual contribution amount. Answer choice 2 says, to calculate that, I'd like to know the annual production costs of Prevent-T and the number of patients. So we already seem to know the annual production costs, right? We know how much it costs per dose. And just because we know the number of patients doesn't mean we know the number of doses. Different patients might take a different number of doses, so we need the average dose per patient in addition to the total number of patients. So that's why we go with answer choice 1 here. That's right. Let's go on to calculating the manufacturer's contribution margin in the following exercise. Okay. From the data given below, calculate the manufacturer's annual contribution margin by manufacturing Prevent-T. So our maximum final price per dose is $6, production cost $2, 30 doses per patient, and 800,000 patients per year. So here we simply need to multiply number of patients per year which is 800,000, times 30 doses per patient, times $4 unit contribution margin, calculated by taking the price and subtracting the cost per dose, right? So $4 times 30 times 800,000 gives us $96 million. Great. All right. Another table here. Look at the information below carefully. What are the implications of these new findings? Okay. So here we're looking again at Clearvanax versus Prevent T. We have complications, except this time we're dividing it into complication rate for normal patients and complication rate for high-risk patients. So the complication rate for normal patients, this looks like the exact same table we saw before, right? Prevent T does better at preventing DVT, but worse at embolism and major bleeding. This new segment, high-risk patients, which we can see here represents 200,000 patients compared to 800,000 patients for normal risk patients. So high-risk group is a smaller group compared to the normal risk patients. But looking at this table here, it seems that Prevent T actually does much better in this category than in the normal patient category. For DVT, Prevent T prevents complications by 20%. For embolism, it has the same complication rate. And for major bleeding, it has a slightly higher complication rate. But looking at this overall, it seems like Prevent T is actually delivering more economic value for the high-risk patient segment. So I think this is important here because this suggests that there's two different customer groups, right? Or patient groups. We have normal patients and high-risk patients, and that hospitals might actually be willing to pay a higher price for these high-risk patients because the economic value delivered to these patients is much higher than that of normal patients. So let's see the answer choices here. Answer choice 1 says Prevent T is more effective for high-risk patients. I agree with that. This information is relevant and should be considered. So definitely agree with that statement. Answer choice 2 says it implies that Prevent T should only be used for high-risk patients. So while it is better for high-risk patients, this doesn't necessarily mean that, this should not be used for normal risk patients. There's no data to support this. And in order to reach this decision, we'd actually have to calculate whether, profits would be higher if we went only after the high-risk group or if we went after both groups or just the normal risk group. Answer choice 3 says that this means that Prevent T can be sold to two segments, high-risk patients and normal risk patients. So while that is true, I think answer choice 1 here is a much better conclusion because it clearly states that Prevent T is more effective for high-risk patients and that we should consider this in making our decision. So we'll go with answer choice 1 here. The new findings do imply that there are actually two markets for Prevent T, one comprising of high-risk patients and the other made up of normal risk patients. What should the client do? Okay. Answer choice 1 says the client should sell it at the previously determined price. I think it should work for them. Again, no data to back this up, right? We need to calculate the economic value of high-risk patients to determine the price to see, which group actually makes more money if we focus on them. Answer choice 2 says the client should consider the production cost and expected margins before deciding whether to sell Prevent T in one or both markets. Okay? I think that makes sense. Let's look at answer choice 3. The client should look at economic value for customers, that is, hospitals, in both markets before making a decision. So I like answer choices 2 and 3 here. I'm going to lean towards answer choice 3 here simply because, we've looked at economic value for the normal risk patients, so it makes logical sense that we also need to do the same for high risk patients in order to decide 1, what the optimal price would be, and 2, which patient groups we should be targeting. Answer choice 2 I also like, but it says to focus on production costs and expected margins. It does not talk about the incremental economic value that the drug provides for the high-risk patient group. And so for this reason, I'll go with answer choice 3. Well, the economic value of Prevent T is an important parameter to consider. How do you think economic value would be affected by the existence of two different markets? Answer choice 1 says, well, actually, I don't think there would be much impact on economic value. Hospitals will have to pay more for Prevent-T than Clearvanax anyway, so the new findings may not change anything. So I disagree with this, right? If the drug does better for the high-risk group, you could actually price the drug higher for that customer group. Answer choice 2 says, the economic value of Prevent-T would be higher for hospitals in the case of high-risk patients. Therefore, the client can charge a higher price for Prevent-T. I agree with this. It's exactly what we said. Answer choice 3 says, the client needs to check whether the increased rates of other complications with Prevent-T could offset the reduced complication rates of DVT. In that case, the economic value of Prevent-T for the customers would not change much. So I think 3 is wrong here, right? Even though the other complications have higher rates, we've already factored that into our economic value calculation, right? So we need to do the exact same thing, but for the high-risk patient group. So for that reason, answer choice 2 here makes the most logical sense. The client has conducted studies comparing the impact of Clearvanax and Prevent-T on DVT and other complications of hip endoprosthesis. Details are available in the following table. You may be right. Further exploration is certainly warranted to see how the price of Prevent-T could be impacted by this development. Answer choice 1 says, I'd consider the high-risk patients a new group of patients and calculate willingness to pay and annual contribution margin for this group separately. Do we have data on that? Okay, I agree with that. Answer choice 2 says, I'd suggest we continue with a price of $6. So I disagree with that, right? We need to calculate the new willingness to pay and the economic value. Answer choice 3 says, I'd like to know how the price of Clearvanax is going to change in response to these findings. So this is pretty irrelevant. We need to calculate economic value again for this high-risk patient group. How the competitor is changing the price of Clearvanax is less relevant at this point. Okay, we do have data for that. You need to calculate the willingness to pay and price of Prevent-T for the new group of high-risk patients. Let's move on to that in the following exercise. From the data given below, calculate the maximum price of Prevent-T for the high-risk group. Assume the number of doses required per patient to be 30. And it says here to round off your answers to the closest integral value. So if DVT cost per complication is $1,600, and Prevent-T is 20% lower than Clearvanax, here we're delivering $320 of economic value to hospitals. For PE, both drugs have the same rate, so no incremental economic value is being delivered. So this does not save hospitals money, nor does it cost them more money. However, for bleed, Prevent-T does worse than Clearvanax by 2%, right? So 2% times $1,250 gives us $25. So if we take $320 minus $25, we get $295, which is the economic value we're delivering overall. If the number of doses is 30, $295 divided by 30 is roughly rounded $10. So $10 is the economic value per dose. But remember, again, this is not the price we need to set Prevent-T. $10 is the economic value compared to Clearvanax. So if Clearvanax is priced at $4, this drug provides an additional $10 in incremental value. So the actual final price per dose would be $10 of economic value plus $4 for Clearvanax. So that gets us $14 per dose. We now know that hospitals would be willing to pay up to $14 to use Prevent-T for high-risk patients and $6 for normal-risk patients. Let's assume hospitals don't have any loyalty and would change drugs for any amount of savings, no matter how small. To keep Prevent-T from capturing 100% of the market, Clearvanax's maker would lower its drug price. In this case, what should be our client's competitive response to drive Clearvanax out of the market? So here we're talking about the competitor lowering their drug prices, which would make hospitals more likely to purchase from them because they are getting more economic value from their drug at a lower price. So our client with Prevent-T would then need to lower the drug by the same amount Clearvanax is lowering in order to make the hospitals purchase the drug. So let's see our answer choices here. Answer choice 1. Prevent-T would have to reduce its drug price by the amount of the original contribution margin of Clearvanax, which is $3. So let's think about this. The maximum that Clearvinax's price could be reduced by is $3 because it costs them $1 to produce the drug, right? So if Prevent T were also to reduce it by $3, then hospitals would purchase from Prevent T because it's a better drug. Answer choice 2 says Prevent T would have to reduce its drug price by the amount of production cost of Clearvinax, which is $1. So this is not true here, right? The competitor that makes Clearvinax can reduce price until the price is $1, right? So if it's originally priced at $4, they can reduce it down to $1 and still break even on the drug. So you would actually be reducing by $3, not $1. And so for a similar reason, answer choice 3 is wrong. We'd have to lower the price by the contribution margin of Clearvinax, which is $3. Correct. If Prevent T reduces its price by $3, Clearvinax would have to sell its drug at $1, which would not be affordable because its production cost is also $1. What would this imply for the price of Prevent T for normal risk and high risk patients? So what this means is that if competitors drop their price down to $1, which is a drop of $3, then we would also need to drop our price down by $3, right? So if we calculated $14 for high risk patients, the new price would need to be $11. And for the normal risk patients, we calculated a price of $6. And so that would need to be dropped by $3, also down to $3. So looking at our answer choices, answer choice 1 says for normal risk patients, the price would be $2. We know this is wrong, right? We have to take the price of $6 and subtract $3. And so answer choice 2 here says the price for normal risk patients is $3. Otherwise, for high risk patients, $11. So I like answer choice 2 here. And answer choice 3 says Prevent T should be marketed for the two groups at different prices. So answer choice 2 here is better because it's more specific and actually gives numbers for the two different customer segments rather than just saying that, you should sell it at two different prices. So we'll go with answer choice 2 here. Well, Prevent T decided to drive Clearvinax out of the market and would have to choose between marketing the drug for normal risk patients at $3 or for high risk patients at $11. What would you recommend? So I think this comes down to profits. Which group is going to make more money for us? So we obviously make more money per dose for high risk patients, but we know high risk patients make up only 200,000 patients, while the normal risk patients make up 800,000 patients. So, one group has a higher profit margin per dose, but another group is much larger. So we have to calculate it out. Looking at answer choice 1, it suggests that we want to calculate the annual contribution margins for both potential markets. Definitely agree with that. Answer choice 2 says Prevent T should be marketed only for high risk patients. So again, we don't have any data to back that. We actually need to do the math and calculations to figure it out. So we'll go with answer choice 1 here. This table provides the necessary data to calculate the manufacturer's contribution margins for normal risk and high risk patients. Okay, let's take a look. So we have normal risk patients, high risk patients. We have the final competitive price. We subtract production costs, the manufacturer contribution margin per dose, number of doses per patient, patients per year. And it looks like it already calculated the manufacturer contribution margin. It's $24 million for normal risk patients, right? That's the 800,000 times 30 doses per patient times the $1 contribution margin. And it's $54 million for high risk patients. So if we were forced to only target either normal or high risk, it would make sense for us to target high risk because we're making $54 million, which is $30 million more than if we were just targeting normal risk patients. Look at the information below carefully. Now that you have the price and contribution margins for both groups, which approach would you recommend to market for Prevent T? So Prevent T should be marketed for both groups, high risk and normal risk. So we know this answer is wrong, right? The previous question explicitly told us that we were only going to focus on one group because we were going to try to drive Clearvinax out of the market. And among 2 and 3, we obviously go for the high risk patients because they have a higher profit per year. So answer choice 2. I'd like to know a little more about the reasons behind your recommendation. Why would you market the drug for high-risk patients only? 1. Marketing the drug only for high-risk patients means that the client would earn a higher contribution margin per dose. 2. Their total profit is higher when the drug is marketed only for high-risk patients. And 3. High-risk patients benefit the most from Prevent T because Prevent T reduces the complication rates for DVT more significantly among these patients than among normal risk patients. So looking at the choices here, I like answer choice 2. Basically, total profit's higher, that's why we're going with high risk. Answer choice 1, although the higher contribution margin is true, it comes down to profit, right? Number of patients times doses times contribution margin per dose. So answer choice 1 is only partially true. Answer choice 3 is also wrong because we're not picking to focus on high risk just because it performs better. We're picking it because it creates more profit per year. In that case, what would be your final recommendation on pricing and the group of patients to target? 1. The client should charge a price between $6 and $14 and market Prevent T for both groups to capture a higher market share. So this is wrong. We've clearly stated before we're only focusing on one group, in this case the high-risk group. 2. The client should charge a little less than $6 and market Prevent T for normal risk patients. Again, we're targeting high-risk patients, so this one's not true. So that leaves us with 3. The client should charge a little less than $11 and market Prevent T for high-risk patients in order to earn a higher profit and have 100% market share. I think this is exactly right. It states that we're targeting high-risk patients because high-risk patients provide a higher annual profit per year than the normal risk patients. This recommendation also states the price, that we'd price it at a little less than $11. And finally, it states the rationale for why we are pricing it at $11 and not $14. We've reduced it by $3 so that we can take Clearvanax out of the market and capture 100% market share. So I think answer choice 3 here clearly summarizes all of the takeaways and rationales of coming up with the price and the customer segment to focus on. All right, looks like we've finished the case. These BCG interactive cases also kind of grade you on rigor, business judgment, structuring, and synthesis. So let's see how we did. So it looks like we did quite well on this case. I think overall, pricing cases are pretty straightforward cases to solve. You're basically taking your cost to produce the item as your lower bound, the economic value delivered to customers as the upper bound, and you would be benchmarking your product's performance with that of competitors to help you decide where in between those lower and upper bounds to price the product. I think for these cases, as long as you maintain this framework and logical, rational thinking in mind, you can systematically identify the optimal price to set your product at. Feel free to give this case a try on your own and let me know in the comments section below how well you did. If you found this video helpful, please give this video a like to help with the YouTube algorithm and check out some of my other videos on my channel where I walk through other full case interviews.